Welcome back, everybody. It's great to see everyone today. Thank you for your patience with our construction out front, which I completely forgot about. It's going to be a beautiful reading room at some point, and so needless to say, we're pretty excited about that. Thanks for coming out in the cold weather, too. Actually, it's like a heat wave today compared to yesterday. For those of you at home watching, thank you. We appreciate your support. As a reminder, all of these programs are available under the library's YouTube page, so feel free to watch them 24/7. Thanks to Paige and Josh for all your support and help as always. I want to thank Stephanie, Pam, Sharon, Lisa, Karen, Vicki, Barb, Lynn, and Charlotte for the delicious treats today. And I'd like to take a moment, too, to congratulate Hope Taft for her well-deserved recognition from the Garden Club of America. She was awarded the Achievement Medal for being an inspiring and steadfast advocate for the use of native plants in landscapes and preservation of natural ecosystems. So congratulations, Hope, well-deserved. Just quick announcements coming up Wednesday, February 11th at 1 o'clock on this very stage. Martin McAllister, who's the with Friends of the Scioto Brush Creek and Arc of Appalachia. I think that's going to be a really interesting subject about Scioto Brush Creek and everything they went through to get that designated a scenic river, which is very exciting. On March 18th, I'm really excited to announce Rebecca McMacken. If you do not get her emails, I strongly encourage you to do so. She provides a wealth of information regarding what's happening out there in the natural world. We're really thrilled to have her in, thanks to the support of the Bexley Community Foundation. And then our Arbor Day event on Wednesday, April 8th, is Mike Tidwell, who is the author of The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue and the founder of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. So I think that's really going to be an interesting topic, too. So again, thank you all for coming out. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker. Bill Stanley has been with the Nature Conservancy for over 20 years, currently serving as the state director here in Ohio. Bill has served at the request of 3 different governors in our state in several capacities, including as a member of Ohio's Forestry Advisory Council and the Ohio Water Development Authority. Bill also serves on the Vice President's Advisory Council to the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Scientists, which I believe is also part of the Master Gardener program. I think we're under those auspices, aren't we? And so there. And you're involved with the environment. Oh, that's part of Ohio State. And on the board of local nonprofit Rapid 5. So a forest scientist by training with work experience in climate, agriculture, and water. He has published conservation-related articles in several publications, and he holds a master's degree in forest science from Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, and a BA in environmental science from the University of Virginia. But most importantly, he just knows a lot about what's going on out in our world, and we are so excited to welcome you here today, Bill.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, so I was actually counting up today. I've worked for the Nature Conservancy for over 25 years, 26 years this January, and I started actually in Washington, D.C., and I was counting up the number of countries I've visited with the organization. It's 14. So I've been around the block, but it's great to be in Ohio. I've been here for 16 years, and I'll give you a little bit of that history in a minute. And I've been a state director, the director here in Ohio, for a little over 6 years now. Oh, here we go. So I have a word that I use for our conservation work, which is fearless, and fearless conservation. It's kind of the way I got started here in Ohio in my director role. And usually the word conservation is after that, but fearless is what we all need to be in terms of protecting the environment. And what that's about is really kind of, coming up with innovative ideas, embracing that we can make a difference as individuals and as an organization, really radical partnership in realizing we can't do it alone, that we need the help of others, and just really jumping in with both feet and making a difference. So I got started in conservation, as probably many of us did, as a kid in a way. I grew up in East Tennessee, and that's my dad. There he was born and raised in a town called Maryville in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. And I spent a lot of times out, going out my back door, messing around in creeks, turning over rocks, seeing what I could find. Really loved salamanders, and caught a lot of crayfish, and would spend time out there with my brother. I have 3 older brothers, and we, as we grew, we also did things like, my 2 oldest brothers started having a beehive. So we got a beehive, and I helped them with that, and they also did a lot of kind of timber cutting to make extra money, and they put me to work helping them with that too. So I'm the youngest of 4 boys. And then, of course, I have my own kids, and you see my kids there. That's Luke and Kate. Going on. We have learned to really love, of course, Ohio, and my kids grew up in Ohio. They've been here pretty much their whole lives. My son was born in Virginia, and my daughter lived there for a couple of years, but we moved here before my son turned 1 year old. And if you want to know what they look like today, that's more like what they look now. And if you want to know why I came here, I got a couple things I want to show you. That's the reason I'm in Ohio right there. My wife, Megan, grew up in Youngstown, and she and I had 2 little kids, just the 2 little kids. I remember one time I said, we came back to Ohio, I think 5 times in a year, and I said, if we keep going to Ohio that often, maybe we should just move there. And she's like, done, let's do it. And so I've been here ever since, and it's been wonderful. And I brought, my Tennessee family up here to Ohio as well, and that's my mom there. She's in her 80s, and that's at Quarry Trails Park just a couple months ago. And she's the one that really kind of, also got me into nature. And you'll hear the theme of women. I see a lot of women in the audience today, which is great, and a few guys. Hey guys, good to see you. But there's a lot of women in the history of the Nature Conservancy, and I'll get into that here in just a minute. But before that, I want to just give you an overview of the organization and what we're about. It was a dream for me to find this kind of organization. I didn't really know that conservation could be a career until I was in college, and I was out doing research in Virginia off the coast. For a professor that was studying clonal dune grasses. And we had 3 different species of dune grasses we were studying out there, and he had 3 researchers. Each of us had a species. And as I was out there, I remember just riding back in the boat one day. I'm like, who owns that island? That's such a cool place. And they said the Nature Conservancy. I had never heard of it before. And it turns out that ended up being, an organization that I fell in love with as I learned more about it. So I think you will too. Some of you I know the Nature Conservancy. Some of you, it may be a newer organization for you. But I'm going to give you a 3-minute video here and get an overview of kind of our work today.
Have you ever seen it? An ancient forest regaining its strength. A majestic bear free to roam the ice. The rainbow of a renewing reef. Have you ever heard it? Wings returning to their sanctuary. A dance toward home reborn. The thunder of hooves as grasslands regrow. When we give nature a chance, it comes back stronger. Now, we've reached a fork in the river. One direction leads to catastrophic climate change and the loss of life as we know it. Yet nature, speaking in wildfires, rising seas, and mighty winds, asks us to take another direction, toward restoration, resilience, and renewal. Since 1951, the Nature Conservancy has stood to protect and preserve nature in all its forms. And today, the stakes have never been higher. Neither has our ambition to preserve lands as vast as continents, to safeguard our waters and bring life back from the brink of loss, to harness the power of science, honor the wisdom of indigenous cultures, and support the courage of communities. When we work for nature, it works for us. Trees capture our carbon and purify our water. Coral reefs shield our shorelines. prairies support the pollinators essential for our food. Nature never stops, so neither will we. Because when nature thrives, all of us do. So for every forest that stands, and every field that sways, for every river that rushes, and every wave that roars, for every insect that crawls and bird that soars, for the flowers that bloom and the landscapes that amaze, for the rain that renews, the sun that sustains, and the soil that gives and gives again, for the plants yet to grow, the streams yet to flow, the wildlife yet to be born, for every voice that speaks, for every hand that heals, for every heart that dares to hope, for the children of tomorrow whose lives depend on the choices we make today. To love this earth is to love our own beating hearts. We're the Nature Conservancy, and together we find a way.
The microphone back on here. That's our global organization, and I've been here, like I said, 26 years. The organization has grown a lot, and we work in over 80 countries now. That said, we have very local roots as well, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that here. But before doing that, I actually want to introduce my staff that are in the room, because we have a local presence right here. In fact, one of our employees, our Director of Government Policy and Government Relations, Mary Tarosi, lives right here in Bexley. Mary, where are you? I don't see you. She had to run to a meeting. So she's out working. Okay, so she was here for a minute, and I skipped our meeting this morning. I'm like, I need to prepare for this presentation for you. So she had to go, but Mary Beth is here, and Kyle is here as well. And I live in Grandview, and Mary Beth lives there as well, and Kyle not far away in Upper Arlington, so we're all really close here. And we have 1 million members, and we are one organization working for one common goal, and our mission is to protect the lands and waters on which all life depends. That said, I want to bring it back to Ohio for a minute, because this is the part of our origin story that I like to tell. It's very clear that Ohio had a big role in getting this organization started, believe it or not. We had Dr. E. Lucy Brown, who studied at the University of Cincinnati, one of the first 5 women, I think the 4th woman to get a PhD at the University of Cincinnati in botany in 1914. Her sister was the first, actually, to get a PhD. She's the first woman president of the Ohio Academy of Science, and she's published many books, 4 books and many, many articles on ecology. And why do I talk about Dr. Brown in the context of our organization? This is her and her older sister, Annette, getting out into areas of Ohio and northern Kentucky and other places that they thought were wonderful and truly were wonderful. Her sister was a microlepidopterist, which you guys all probably know what that means. She studied really tiny moths, and a lot of them were found in grasslands, and they learned to appreciate these grasslands not only for the moths, but for the plants that were there and the rare plants. So one of the things about Dr. E. Lucy Brown is that she was a part of the Ecological Society of America in 1943. At that time, there weren't very many women that were a part of that group. And she was one of the people that said, it's really not enough for us just to study these beautiful places, these amazing places. We got to do something to protect them. And so they decided to form what they call the Ecologists Union, dedicated to the preservation of natural areas for scientific use. Believe it or not, the ESA didn't want to be a part of that. They said, well, we don't really support that. You guys are going to have to go off on your own and do that. We just are about studying nature, not about protecting it. And the Ecologists Union even, there was a branch of the Ecologists Union that said, no, that's not what we're about. We're about ecology and studying ecology. So this group, and with Dr. Brown and others, in 1950 at a meeting in Columbus at the Ohio State University, the Ohio Ecologists Union decided to change its name. You know what they changed it to? You got it. I mean, it's kind of led you down the path, but yes, the Nature Conservancy. So here we go. That is the origin. In my mind, that's the origin of our organization. You'll hear a lot of people say it's the origin, excuse me, was when we incorporated a year later, 1951. 75 years ago, this is our 75th anniversary in Washington, D.C. We incorporated in 1951. Some people will tell you that the origin story is when we bought our first property, McManus Gorge in New York State. But I say the origin of the Nature Conservancy is in Columbus in 1950. Not only did she have a role in helping to get the organization started, she also helped us with one of our first land purchases as an organization in 1959 with the purchase of Lynx Prairie, which is the same place, one of the places that she and her sister would go and visit and look for the tiny moths and to study the botany there. This is kind of an interesting part of the history too. And again, lots of women in these stories. Did you know that the proceeds from a cooking school organized by Marion Rombauer Becker was used to purchase Lynx Prairie? So Marion had been the one who illustrated The Joy of Cooking, which her mother authored. And then they went on to sell the paperback rights and use the paperback rights, the sales from the paperback rights, to fund additional conservation in 1989 at the edge of Appalachia. So that 43 Lynx Prairie, now, that has turned into 21,000 acre preserve in southern Ohio that we call the edge of Appalachia. And you can see that it's a really important part of that community down there. Over 20 miles of hiking trails, lots of access to Brush Creek. And I know you have a speaker, Martin McAllister, coming to talk about Cider Brush Creek. Cider Brush Creek is right in this area. I think he'll probably talk a little bit about the edge of Appalachia because it helps to protect Cider Brush Creek. And Martin knows that really well because guess what? He also works for the Nature Conservancy. So, lots of intertwined stories here. And I think if you remember, I said that my family has really fallen in love with Ohio, or I've fallen in love with Ohio. My wife already loved it before, but I've gotten to know the state well. And one of my favorite places is this Buzzard Roost Rock, which is a part of the edge of Appalachia. You got to go visit if you haven't been. Anybody been there before? Got a few of you. The governor, Governor DeWine, went down and he's been out there on that same point that you see in this picture, and his grandkids and some of his kids as well. So I'm going to talk some more about conservation in Ohio. I know some of you were expecting me to talk a lot about climate change. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but not a ton. I was actually our climate change director when I lived in Washington, D.C. I used to tell a joke, like I would show people my hair loss, and I would say, you know, help save the poles, because every time the poles recede, so does my hairline. But I far outpaced the poles at this point, so I don't use that one often, but I did direct that program for quite a while, and I will talk a little bit about climate change. I did want to introduce you to the work in Ohio. We've got over 80, actually close to 100 projects going on. We can't do this all alone. We do a lot of it through partnerships. We work on policy, high-level policy, and Mary's our director of that, who you didn't get to meet, but who was here a few minutes ago. And we also, so we kind of work on overarching policy that supports programs, things like H2 Ohio that you might have heard of. We have a program called the Ohio Mitigation Program that's got over 40 stream and wetland restoration projects going on, and there's some of the dots you see on the map. And we have a lot of partnership with different organizations, local land trusts all over the state, with the state itself, ODNR, and many others, including Ohio State University, where we are doing some work at with the university on mainly on agriculture and drainage practices. So lots of different work going on throughout the organization. We still do land conservation, and we still do own nature preserves as well. As I mentioned, Edge of Appalachia is one of them, and I'll show you a few others. But I want to dive a little bit deeper into the strategy of conservation in terms of how do we prioritize areas to work and how we use science to do that. So I want to show you first this map. One of the things that's fairly unique about this organization is we do think at different scales, and you'll hear me going in and out. I talk global, then I'll talk very local. I'll talk about individuals, I'll talk about policy, because that's the way we work as an organization. We both look at what needs to happen on the ground and locally, but we also think about how does that fit within the larger context. And thinking about climate change, we have to think about the way things move, and we'll need to move to find, for example, cooler climates to support them. And one of the things, and I was doing the math on the way over, and it may not be exactly right, but I think it's something like for every 100 feet you climb in elevation, it's like 6 miles going north. So you think about it, as you climb a mountain, say on the Rockies, it gets colder and colder as you go up. Every 100 feet you climb is like going 6 miles to the north in terms of change in temperature. So these species are looking for both movement towards the poles, but also movement up, right? In fact, a movement up sometimes is it can be a lot easier to go, instead of going 6 miles, we'd rather go 100 feet, right? So we think about that in our planning, and we think about these large connected corridors at the same time. And this kind of shows, excuse me, how things move or are anticipated to move. And you look at mammals, birds, and amphibians there. Of course, birds can get around easier than mammals and amphibians, even the least. So we actually have to think about different species and how they move. With birds, you can have islands, that they can hop one to another and even fly over cities. With amphibians, that's a lot harder, isn't it? So we have to think about corridors for both of those types of scenarios. So really, mobility is survival. And when we looked at the edge of Appalachia, you may have noticed that as we grew over time, we started growing to the east. That was to establish a connection between the edge of Appalachia and the Shawnee State Forest to help species move between them, things like black bear, but also reptiles and amphibians. Timber rattlesnakes are not common there, but we're finding them more and more often. They're in state endangered species. Maybe you don't care about rattlesnakes that much. You don't even want them necessarily, but we need every part of the ecosystem. The other one we're preserving down there that's endangered species that we think about a lot is called the Allegheny wood rat. Another one, maybe not like wood rats aren't all soft and cuddly, but another name that we sometimes said, let's rebrand them as the velvety cliff mouse. That sounds a lot better, doesn't it? So the velvety cliff mouse is another one that we're protecting down there. So this again, we use that information to look for both resilient places, and this is where you get kind of into the microclimates a little bit. We're looking for places with some topography, with wetter areas and drier areas. That's one of the reasons on that Sunshine Corridor we protected both the north slope and the south slope. So areas of topography tend to be resilient to climate change. And we're looking for connections across large landscapes. So that's why we call this our Resilient and Connected Lands Network. If you look at those green areas, most of the green areas that we find in Ohio are in the Appalachian part of the state. There are some, it's harder to see them in this map, but in the northern part of the state as well. And so let's zoom in a little bit more on Ohio. And again, you can see what I'm talking about there with some areas up there in the north, like at Cuyahoga Valley National Park area, even around the coast of Lake Erie, which you think about bird migration, incredibly important, the coast of Lake Erie. And we're looking at now kind of some corridors, even in Sandusky River, in the Sandusky Bay, to build this out and protect this more. But a lot of our emphasis is in southern Ohio. So I want to zoom in a little bit more. Here we are going kind of global to local again, right? These are nice big concepts, but how does this touch down in real places? I want to share with you a story of a success in right there where that red dot was in northern Athens County with a project called Joy Valley. The Joy Valley Nature Preserve was protected last year now in 2025 through a partnership with the Athens Conservancy and the Nature Conservancy. A 3,000 acre forest was protected, which is a part of that Resilient Connected Network. And there's a picture there you all recognize. You know the plants better than I do, most of you. I will be honest with you. I'm an ecologist, kind of a large scale thinker, but you probably recognize the sedum and the moss, but there are many different plant species there, of course. And of course, all of this is made possible. It didn't just happen magically. It's made possible by people. And there you see some of our partners with the Athens Conservancy, Ryan Blair, their board chair. That's my director of land protection, Terry Seidel. And of course, you see me, and this is Veronica, another Athens Conservancy board member. The most important person in this picture is Betty Lowe, and then also her kids, Dave and Peter, but really Betty, because this is Betty's idea. She wanted to protect this property, and she wanted, excuse me, I'm sorry. She wanted to make sure that she would get that done before she passed away, and she did, and she's incredibly happy about it. That's her with a big smile. And she looks great, and she's just doing wonderful. And we've been working with her on this for 10 years and finally came up with an approach that worked well for the family and for conservation. So thanks to Betty for that. So I did say I would mention a few of our other preserves. We do have them all over the state. We have 8 open preserves. It's easy to find them on our website. I'm not going to talk about each one of them, but you can get an idea of what some of them look like. We have them all over. Kitty Todd Nature Preserves in Northwest Ohio. I'll talk a little bit more about that if I have time in a minute. Grand River Conservation Campus in Northeast Ohio in Ashtabula County. Lucia Nash, also up in Northeast Ohio. And finally, closer to home, the Big Darby Creek Headwaters Nature Preserve, which is out towards Marysville. I want to mention that we do work on climate and energy in Ohio, and if Mary were here, I would thank her for her team's work to get a bill passed that would allow for really provide incentives for development of clean power on brownfield sites, because there is some concern about wind power and solar, for example, taking productive farm fields out of production, or being built on natural grasslands, or even in some places there have been forests cut to put in solar power, which seems kind of crazy. So we're trying, how do we incentivize it on brownfields? So we were able to get a law passed through the General Assembly that would provide incentives to get what we call priority investment areas to develop on brownfield sites. And we're looking a lot in Southern Ohio, again, on mine sites in Appalachia as a key place for that, because you have the history of energy and even coal power. You have power lines, and you have sites that are brownfield sites that were previously mine sites. So we are getting some success. It's a difficult policy environment, if I'm honest right now. But we have been able to find some ways to have success. Water is on everybody's mind, and it's frankly what we spend most of our time on in Ohio. If I think about my team and the projects we have, of the 100 or so projects that I mentioned, at least 80 of them are primarily related to water, and primarily stream and wetland restoration projects throughout the state. So it's the majority of the work we do now in Ohio. So here in Central Ohio, I'm kind of thinking about Central Ohio, a lot of concern about data centers and water use and power demands related to that, which I kind of got into power a little bit. We see this as certainly a threat, and also, how can we turn that threat into an opportunity? That's the challenge that we have. Is it possible? Maybe to some extent, and we're doing that through what we call the Central Ohio Water Program. It's led by a guy named Adam Lehman, who's amazing. We just won an award for this program through the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, MORPC, for collaborative leadership for our work. What we're doing is companies come in and they, I'm gonna be frank, talk a big game about how they want to protect the environment, and then they don't always follow through on that. And what we were finding is that these companies were basically shopping around to different environmental organizations, and they were looking for, some of them were looking for projects that were mostly completed. Maybe they put the last 10% in, they can have a big splash in the paper. And they were basically talking to different organizations and getting the best deal they could. So we decided, let's get together as a group of organizations that are interested in protecting the environment, compare our project concepts, make sure we're all kind of, requiring full payment for the projects, not just partial, that we're really getting the highest priority projects for the region put forward. So Adam, with that group, has developed a list of projects for companies to consider with quantified metrics related to water benefits, and they can choose from that menu of projects. And we've gotten our first projects going upstream from Buckeye Lake, actually, and helping to reduce harmful algae blooms in Buckeye Lake through that program, and that's what we won the award for, working with the Licking County Soil and Water Conservation District, and of course the local landowner on that project. And there were a number of companies, 4 companies also that supported that project, and I can tell you more about that kind of offline if you'd like to talk about that. It's not that it's not public information, I just don't have time. So moving forward, as I mentioned, it's policy, partnerships, programs, and people that lead to tangible conservation. Every single one of you can make a difference, and you saw the example of E. Lucy Brown and Betty Lowe as 2 examples of women who really kind of decided they wanted to do right by conservation, stood up and were fearless in kind of moving forward in conservation. We can make a difference. Do I have time, you think? All right, I'm gonna tell a story that I just find illustrates a lot of the things that we've been talking about here. in terms of the difference a person can make and people can make, and also about both working at the policy level and then working locally. And I was asked a question once, how do you know that your work is working, basically? How do you know that you're being successful? And I'm like, I want to tell you a story about a flooded farm field in Northwest Ohio in Lucas County. This is a field that has been farmed for a couple generations by a family called the Bettingers. And it is adjacent to what we call our Kitty Todd Preserve, which is in the Oak Openings region, which is an oak savanna area in Northwest Ohio. Some of the things it's known for, blue lupine, and also for the Carner blue butterfly, which is an endangered species. So you can hear there's some, thinking about the Bronze Sisters, I think they would have loved this area. This does not look like a lupine field, does it? It looks like a flooded cornfield. And Mr. Bettinger said that this field was really difficult to keep dry. He had to pump it a lot. He had a pump, he was pumping the water out into a ditch to farm this field. And basically we said, it looks like it's begging to be a wetland again. This was part of the Great Black Swamp. Would you allow us to purchase this property and turn it back into wetland? Well, I don't know. My family's been farming it for a long time. I really don't think I want to do that. Well, through persistence, one of my director of land protection, Terry Seidel, so this is the individual, he talked to Mr. Bettinger years and years, and whenever that field flood, he was back in there, it's like, are you sure? You look at, this is not working for you. Finally, Mr. Bettinger came around, and there's policy that also helped with this. So policy helped provide a lot of the funding through the Clean Water Act funding, H2 Ohio funding to provide for this restoration project. This is a 280-acre farm. And at that time, our preserve up there was less than 1,000 acres. So for us, it would be huge. I remember Terry telling me one time, he's like, I would like it, but it's not in good shape. We'd have to do a lot of restoration. Well, let's figure that out. So Terry, and I'll show you Terry here in a second, but Terry was able to finally get Mr. Bettinger to agree to do it. He didn't know if he felt real good about it, but he decided to do it. This is what it looked like last year. That's that same cornfield. And that's Terry. So that's Terry Seidel with some of our staff. We were up there at a staff retreat. We were actually planting prickly pear cactus. We had an opening event there, and we had decided to call this area, before we even restored it, we decided to call it Sandhill Crane Wetlands. It wasn't because we'd seen sandhill cranes there. We hadn't seen any. We actually hadn't seen any on Kitty Todd. But we knew they should be up there. And so let's build it kind of an aspirational idea. Let's make this a wetland that sandhill cranes will enjoy. So we called it that, hoping that they would come. We were at the grand opening event and had the tape out there. Mr. Bettinger showed up. He was actually back, and I was up there giving a talk kind of like this, and there were 4 or 5 of us doing that. I saw him show up, and as people were talking, he was getting a little bit closer. He started off about like 50 feet away. Over time he came up maybe 60 feet, came up 20 feet away by the end. And the last speaker, I believe, was from Ohio EPA, and she was saying, in conclusion, and as she said in conclusion, somebody yelled from my team that said, there are 2 sandhill cranes. A pair of sandhill cranes flew down behind her into the field and landed right behind her. There they were. Build it and they'll come. So that was really touching. And not only was that really touching, what was even more touching is as we cut the ribbon, I asked Mr. Bettinger if he would come up and join us, and he did. And he had tears in his eyes. And he said to me, I didn't know how I was going to feel. I had mixed feelings about this. But as I heard you all talk and saw all the people here that are so excited to see this happening, I started feeling better about it, and I think my family would be okay with it. I'm okay with that. In fact, I might actually want to give you more land. So he hasn't given us more land, or we haven't purchased any more from him, but what he did do is he got out there and helped us plant the field. And this actually isn't the same site, but this is an idea of what that ecosystem looks like with the blue lupine. And so he's actually become a part of that story. And that wasn't the only example of success. Later, we started talking to a number of tribes that used to live, indigenous tribes that used to live in Ohio, and started connecting with them through the Ohio History Connection. And one of them was wearing, from the Miami tribe, was wearing a pendant that had a sandhill crane on it. And I asked him about that. And he said that that is their, here, I'll show you the pendant. So this pendant, the sandhill crane is a sacred bird for the Miami. And the reason is because they were camping in a oak savanna habitat up there, and they were about to be attacked by another tribe, and that tribe scared up a bunch of sandhill cranes, and they took off, and they heard them as they were taking off, and it alerted them enough so that they could defend themselves and be protected. So when I heard that story, I told him about the sandhill crane wetlands, and he was like, you know, we should get to know each other better. So we're still working with the Miami too. So I want to end by asking you kind of what's your nature story? You know, think about that. You know, we've got the story of Lucy Brown. I've got my own personal story about how I got involved in nature. You have your story about why you're interested in gardening and the plants and nature. Get active with policymakers. These are all things you can do. Of course, you can donate to the Nature Conservancy, and you can volunteer for the Nature Conservancy. I will tell you, the volunteers we have, whenever I do work with them, it just reminds me how lucky I am to have this career. I mean, these people out here volunteering their time, I get paid to do this, and it's really fun, and I love it. But you know, people care so much, and volunteering is a good way to get involved. So as they said in the video, we really, our mission is to protect the lands and waters on which all life depends. And we can't do it alone. With all your help, we can find a way to do it. Together, we can find a way. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Does anybody have any questions? We use the mic because otherwise people out in TV land can't. Oh, God, you didn't know you.
The pair of sandhill cranes there, was that last year?
The cranes, that was actually a couple, boy, that event now is probably 4 years ago.
So
Yeah.
was it a nesting pair? Do you have nesting pairs there?
They haven't nested yet. We haven't found them yet. You know, we've seen them flying around, and our team has looked around the edges where we think they'd be nesting. I'm sorry, I should be talking to this. She asked if we found nesting pairs of the cranes at Sandhill Crane Wetlands. We haven't found a nesting pair yet. We have been looking around. They have been checking it out. They still haven't nested there yet. Okay. So we're hoping they will. They do nest at our Grand River, at the Lucia Nash Preserve that I showed the picture of in the Snow Lake. We do have nesting pairs there.
Skunk bottoms too, I believe, right?
Probably some there as well. Yeah, I know we have them at Lucia Nash.
Somebody over here. Was that you? No. Oh, somebody else have a question? Well, I have a question. So, you know, we do have a lot of these data centers coming into the state. And, you know, we do hear a lot about the impact to our water supply. I mean, should we rightly be concerned?
Yes. I really wish Mary were here because this is not just a problem in Ohio. And this is one of the things I love about TNC is like, you know, well, there's kind of a double edge here. And I've been around long enough. I'll just tell you guys the whole thing here. It's a problem in many states. In Northern Virginia, in particular, they're getting hit really hard. And it's something that as an organization, we don't have an overarching strategy and a policy approach for. What I hear a lot of people say in the organization is, oh, I think they're working on it in Virginia or they're working on it somewhere else. We'll just wait and see what they're going to do. You can't do that. That's the fearless conservation part. What I found in our organization is that you just got to get on it and start working and show the way. And if you find a way to help manage these issues, others will follow suit. Success breeds success. People want to hear about what you're doing, the policies. In fact, the policy I mentioned related to energy and the priority investment areas, that wasn't our idea in Ohio. That came from Indiana. They decided to keep moving that idea forward. They didn't get it through their legislature there, but we got it through here in Ohio. So we borrow from each other, but we are not on top of this one yet, if I'm honest. You know, that said, some of the funding that went into the project that I mentioned with the Central Ohio Water Partnership, that came from Google and Amazon Web Services. So they are providing some. It's not enough. You know, there needs to be a lot more done. It's definitely a concern. It's a concern from both water and energy perspective.
So we live along the Little Darby watershed, and there's a lot of discussion about land use in that watershed. and a lot of pressure on the agriculture industry and a lot of pressure from the agriculture industry back. And so my question is, the gentleman that gave you the land for Sand Hill, how does his neighbors feel about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And by the way, I was at a meeting with the City of Columbus about the Big Darby Accord revision late last week. And yeah, it's up for revision, as you probably know. And Adam Lehman, again, I mentioned his name a lot, but he's working on that. But your question was about how did the neighbors feel about it? They were concerned, honestly. So not going to gloss this over. You know, they were worried that we're going to flood their neighboring properties. So we really had to reassure them. Let me tell you that the technical skills of the designers, so that project restoration was designed by an outfit called Mad Scientists. And Mark Dilley, you all might know him and his wife, who run that organization. They did a fantastic job with it, and they were up for the opening event, Mark was, and I got to ask him about it. They had it surveyed so well, and they knew exactly every contour of that. They have it all in the GPS system. And I didn't know this at the time, but they basically create the model, engineering model, and the big machines they go out there and move the earth. They're running by GPS, really. And they get it down so precise into the design that they were very confident that they could drain the water off that land. Now, is that reassuring to the neighboring landowners? A little bit, but the proof is in the pudding. It's that first big rainfall event, and once that happens and they're not flooded, then they're okay with it. But yeah, there was a concern about it. We listened to that concern and tried to reassure the best we could, but no big outcry or really strong opposition.
Did it inspire others to give land?
Well, yeah, not right there at this point, but yeah, I do think it is inspiring. We haven't gotten other landowners in the mix up there. Well, that's not true. They're just not as big as that one. That one was 280 acres. The landowners have been selling to us up there, and we did buy that land. He didn't donate it. Betty Lowe donated her land. They're smaller parcels. They might be 10, 15, 20 acres. So that one was a big deal because of how large it was. So yes, others are following suit, but they're smaller lands than that one.
I wanted to ask, how does one go about donating land to the Conservancy, and what are the parameters? What are you looking for when somebody approaches you?
I love that question.
Good job.
Let's talk. Yeah. No, it's a great question. And first of all, Mary Beth and Kyle can help you, and so can I. If you're interested, we can help you learn more. But frankly, the Nature Conservancy, you've probably heard it. If any of you listen to NPR, and you can donate just about anything, artwork or cars or whatever it might be, and we're the same way. We have a professional team that can help with that. So on what we're looking for, we do have specific priority areas. And it's really those, we have 4 areas that we're building on right now in Ohio at the Nature Conservancy, and as far as us wanting to own for preserves. And they're Kitty Todd, this area where the sandhill cranes were. It's also the edge of Appalachia that I mentioned before, Grand River Conservation Campus in Ashtabula County. So West Union is one, and then West Union down to Adams County, then Ashtabula County, and then Northeast. Those are the main ones, and then the Big Darby headwaters near Marysville also we're looking at. That said, if you had land other places, a couple things. It may be we can help you connect to another land trust that's interested in that property, number one. And so there are lots of really strong land trusts in Ohio that work in different places that we don't work, because we don't need to, because they're working there. And so we could help put you in touch with them. Or if it's a property that's not really a conservation property, more of just a property we will take that as well. And what we'll do with that, so we've had people donate to us, properties with houses on them that are really residential properties, and we just make sure they understand we're not going to keep this as a conservation area. We're going to, with your blessing, sell this property and use the proceeds to fund our mission. And so we've had those two, we call that trade lands. So we have all of those different opportunities. That's all. Didn't forget you. I think Hope had a question too early,
okay.
but
I would be last. Okay.
I'm curious about how much of your budget or how much of your time is devoted to lobbying, either at a state, local level? And then the second part of that question is, where are you finding the most success? Do you have good success with, let's say, county level governments, or is it more at the state level?
Really good questions, and I'll take your question as both a question about me personally, but also about the organization. So me personally, you know, it's not a whole lot of time. It's probably, honestly, on an annual basis, it's certainly less than 5%, but it might be like 2 or 3% of my time. And for Mary Tarosi was here, it's more. You know, she's got a team. It's her and 2 others, but I think they're probably not more than 5 or 10% of their time really on lobbying. We call a lot of what we do is education. It's like, you know, talking about the importance of the environment, things that need to be done for it. It becomes lobbying when we're talking about specific acts that we want the General Assembly to take, for example, or our federal legislators. Organizationally, we're a 501c3, so we don't have what's called a C4. A C4 does a lot of lobbying. That's mainly what they do. Like the Ohio Environmental Council here, they have a C4. They endorse candidates, for example. We do not do that. We're a nonpartisan organization. We're solutions oriented. If I go and talk to a gubernatorial candidate who's a Democrat, I am actually obliged as a Nature Conservancy director to also talk to the Republican candidate and any other candidate, independent candidate that might be running. We want to give equal time. Good question on how we've been more successful. It's really interesting. You know, most of the time I've been here, we've had DeWine as our governor, and we did have Strickland when I first started, and I would say with DeWine, we've been incredibly successful with water policy. He's been incredibly supportive. And think about the H2 Ohio program. So that's been good. Energy's been a tough one in terms of until we had this win, and that really hasn't amounted to a whole lot yet. So that's been tougher. So at this, you know, the governor's office, really strong on water, really strong on conservation, actually, and land conservation. This administration's been very good on land conservation. The Clean Ohio program was started under a Republican governor named Bob Taft. You might have heard of him before. And so, you know, that program is still going strong. So there's been a lot of good leadership from Republicans and Democrats on environmental policy and programs in the state. Energy has been a little tougher. So where are we having most success? Local, we don't do a ton of work locally other than really trying to make sure that we're good community members with the local officials. And we have been probably getting a little more active in that recently as we've owned more land, say in Southern Ohio, and there are concerns about the tax base down there. And we're kind of working with the local government there and trying to figure out some solutions to that. But the local governments are incredibly important when you think about things like energy development, because they have the ability to both say yay or nay to energy development. They are the ones, the county government decides on priority investment areas, for example. So we'll probably get more active in that. I wouldn't say we've been incredibly successful. We just haven't been that active in local politics to date. But that's something I see us increasing in the coming years. By the way, it varies a lot state by state, as you can imagine.
Well, I thought it was very interesting, and I thank you a lot for highlighting E. Lucy Brown and the impact that she had on the Nature Conservancy and on nature in particular. One of the first events that we had, 3 years ago? Yeah, 4 years ago, was to have an actress come up and portray Lucy. And she did a wonderful job. And she taught us about how Lucy was very influential in wanting to save the mother forest of the Appalachians, and how what you are doing in that direction is also very, very important. And that she was one of those fearless people, and we need more fearless people. Everybody in this room needs to get fearless and protect nature, because nature doesn't speak out very loudly in a way that people can understand it. So it needs you to interpret what it's trying to tell us. But you also mentioned some special spots in Ohio that are resilient to and allow plants and animals to move up and down as well as forward and backwards. And can you list a few of those?
Well, that map I showed you would show them, but like, yeah, it's so interesting. Actually, the Little Miami watershed actually shows up, and you and I've talked about this before, actually, another thing. So where Fort Ancient is, you kind of brought that area up, and that showed up pretty strong. I can't say I wasn't not expecting, because it's so, there's a lot of topography. If you drive down, is it 75? Yeah, 71? 71. Drive down 71, you hit 75, go down to Tennessee, but 71, and when you're driving over the river there, and look, it's just amazing. Look at the topography there. So that's kind of the kind of area you're looking at. Well, a lot of Appalachian Ohio. Hocking Hills, of course, shows up a lot. And it's also kind of where development is interspersed with that. So if you're looking at Southeast Ohio, the topography, anywhere where you see a lot of topography tends to be more resilient, because you can find different facing slopes, north facing, south facing. You can find different moisture regimes with the little micro pockets, and you can find some ability to move into up, but also kind of like find little crevices that might be cool. And think about it, if you're out on a hot day, if you want to cool off, you're not going to the flat field. You're going to find a tree or some topography. You can get on the other side of a mountain if it's late in the day or whatever to cool off. So I think it's pretty intuitive, actually, kind of what shows up as resilient. Soil types do matter too. Some soil types just aren't going to be conducive to growth, and so kind of like, is it provide that topography and the medium, if you will, to move. You're not going to find on a rock outcropping something that requires 6 to 8 inches of soil, for example. You know that as well as anybody, but I think you get it. But like specific places. I mentioned Cuyahoga Valley National Park. You can imagine that area as well, kind of thinking about other parts of the state. Unfortunately, the oak openings didn't show up real strong because it's fairly flat. There's micro topography there, but we're still working on it. And one of the things we talk about is keeping the stage in place. The actors may change. So as long as we have the habitat there, the plants, if you think about them as the actors and the habitat as the stage, the soil, and keep it protected, you can get, you all know this better than I do. The hardiness zones change, right? You can grow plants, different plants that you can grow, maybe you could grow like 30 or 40 years ago. As long as you have that garden there, you can continue to grow the plants. They might just be a different suite of plants. So we don't give up on those places either. Those places are important for us to keep, and to, even if they might change, there's going to be species that we care about there.
Me again. Could you tell us a little bit about the Nature Conservancy's collaborative efforts with other organizations, such as, for instance, the Arc of Appalachia or the Appalachian Ohio Alliance and other such groups?
Yeah, it's a great question. So sometimes I'll tell people, if you care about your local land trust, you should also care about the Nature Conservancy, because a lot of the programs that we're working on help those other ones, and vice versa. I mean, not that they don't support those programs, but not every organization can frankly afford to have someone like Mary Tarosi and Rebecca Molino and her team and Christian Cam. And so they look to the Nature Conservancy to do that work. And one of the things that we can do at the Nature Conservancy is because we have that nonpartisan approach, and we don't pick political winners, for example. We have an open door to policymakers that not every organization has. We're also known for our science and objectivity. We try to really maintain that, making sure that the way we engage is objective. So I'm kind of laying that out because working at that policy level, all those organizations you mentioned, Arc of Appalachia, Appalachia Ohio Alliance, they all count on Clean Ohio money, for example. We've worked, I know, with actually there's a new project that Appalachia Ohio Alliance is doing through the Central Ohio Watershed Program. They were the second project that's getting funded through that program. So they're the ones that we're working with, as an example. Arc of Appalachia, I mean, that's Nancy Stranahan. She's great, and she, by the way, we talked to her about the Betty Lowe property. We thought maybe she would be a good one to own that, but it turned out Athens Conservancy was a better fit. I love what they're doing. She's also thinking about West Virginia now, which is cool. And it's like, we started thinking about more than one state quite a while ago, but I'm glad you're getting into it because there's so much to do in West Virginia. I'm trying to get our West Virginia program plugged into her as well so that they can help there. But we help each other, so we have programs that we partner with those organizations, provide funding for stream and wetland restoration is a big one. Wilderness Center in Cincinnati, I don't know if you've heard of them. We're doing a project with them. We did a project with Agraria, which is actually a sustainable ag organization in Yellow Springs. Again, they needed a wetland restored. We had the funding through our Ohio mitigation program to make that happen. Black Swamp Conservancy, big beneficiary from the H2 Ohio program, more than double the size of their program. That's a program that the Nature Conservancy helped spearhead, actually working hand in hand with believe it or not, the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation. So, we partner in lots of different ways, lots of different organizations benefit from the policy. And we also do something where we will pursue public grants related to invasive species management, for example, through what we call cooperative weed management areas. We used to go out and pursue funding just for work on our lands. One of the changes that I made when I was I was the director of conservation here before the state director. When I was there, I'm like, let's stop thinking about just our lands. Let's think about the whole ecosystem. Ask our neighbors, ask the other organizations working in Northeast Ohio, Northwest Ohio, Southern Ohio, even private landowners too. What help do you need with invasive species? How can we help you? Let's pursue a grant that includes our lands and their lands. Instead of going after $100,000, let's go after $1 million. And so we did that. So we're bringing that funding and then sending our teams out and helping with land management on a number of preserves as well. Mostly that's in northern Ohio, given the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding has been a big source of funding there for that.
Wow, amazing work. Anybody else? Well, thank you, Bill, so much. It's been a pleasure hosting you here today, and your work is important, and we appreciate it. So thank you. Thanks, everybody. And we hope to see you here again in February, and the construction will be going on, so maybe keep that in mind. And thank you for trudging through all of that today and joining us.